The Middle of the Pack podcast.
No, I'm actually working as a nurse in the medical tent at the finish line this year. So I did it last year as well. So hopefully I won't see you
That's
or
just
anyone.
just what I was going to say. Yeah,
And hopefully she won't see me, that's for sure. That's Laura Fleming, welcoming her back to this week's show, and delighted to have her back. Where this week we're focusing more on her work in the tent at the Dublin Marathon. Not to scare anybody, but it's just as a kind of precaution, and hopefully we can learn from her experiences. But we'll start the conversation where I asked her about being in the Cork City Marathon last year.
I did Cork in 2024 and I got very sick after it. Again, I had avoided training in hot weather. Like I hate summer running. I hate the hot weather running. So I had avoided it. And then when I went into it in June 2024, I got really sick after it. Like, yeah, I was vomiting, had diarrhea. The next day I was fainting. I had palpitations. I couldn't urinate. I was very sick.
and what was that doing? Just dehydrated?
Yeah, dehydrated, but probably a little bit of muscle breakdown as well.
Yeah,
That we get when we run, and I just didn't probably drink enough the day after the marathon, like the evening after it. I felt quite well after it. And then the next day I woke up and my partner is a paramedic, so he was able to kind of look after me and know the signs that I was kind of sicker than I was letting on. So yeah, I've been very sensible since then, to be honest, because I knew I could have easily ended up in A&E. I knew I was that sick.
yeah.
So
24 was very hot though, wasn't it?
it was so warm, and it was really warm. There was a lot of people on the route that were very sick. They were in Bother. I think compared to Cork 25, I didn't see half as many people sick or
No.
on the ground. It definitely,
Do you know,
as I said, the hot weather makes such a difference.
just before you come on to the kind of the last stretch, there's a little bit of a
Yeah,
woodlandy bit. In
yeah.
24, they were all dropping like flies there. I mean, like,
Right.
and then you kind of make your way onto North Main Street,
Yeah,
and then you're kind of distracted. But I just remember going, "There's people
absolutely.
dropping like flies." I did the half
Yeah.
marathon. I should have said so. In 24, I did the half marathon, but this year was much better. And my wife Yvonne was kind of saying, "I don't know, would be a chance Cork next year if the weather was going to be like 2024 because it must be really tough."
Yeah, it was. And at 39 kilometers, I remember almost wanting to pull out. And I think then seeing people collapsing on the ground, I was like, oh no, and I think probably as a nurse, your instinct is to go help them. But in fairness, there were so many medics there, but also I knew I was no help to anyone at 39 kilometers, and I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
probably would have been a hindrance to anyone, you know, because you're completely in the pain cave at 39, 40 kilometers, especially with the heat. But the half marathon Cork is tough in the heat as well, because you kind of come out down by, you're joining in with the marathoner pacers, and there's such a good atmosphere and everything. It's amazing, but you're tipping along and then you realize you still a good bit to go and stuff, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yes.
So you're not running Dublin.
Running Dublin, so working in the medical tent for Dublin. Yeah. So I'm sure any of the listeners will be like, I hope I don't see her. And I hope I don't see them either. Yeah, it's a very different aspect of the marathon and stuff. I did the half marathon as well. I worked in the medical tent for that. So I was the nurse, and then we had a medical team with us. And it's an eye opener to see what goes on in the background and the logistics and the planning around it as well. So yeah, it was really interesting.
Tell me,
Really enjoyed it.
is it right? People say that half marathons are worse than the full marathons for.
Absolutely. I worked for the full marathon last year. I was actually meant to run it and I got sick beforehand, and then this came up. So I had done event medicine before, so I just decided I took on the gig, and it was busy. It was definitely busy. But the half marathon in March, it was the first one, was much busier. I think people underestimated at the half marathon distance.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so yeah, that was the general kind of consensus I got from people coming into the tent. They were underfueled, undertrained, some of them, and also I think the heat knocked a lot of people that day. it was the first day that we had a warm weather, and racing warm weather. So I don't think people were expecting that. And then probably had been doing winter training, and that was the first hot weather, 17 or 18 degrees, but it was really, there was no cloud cover. So yeah, it knocked a lot of people. Yeah, so we were very busy for the half marathon, and a lot busier than we were for the full marathon.
And is it normally
Yeah.
younger people that just think they're going to be gung ho and don't take any gels or
Yeah,
water?
it was actually all ages, like
Okay.
right across the board. Yeah, it was. And it was people that had say kind of ran previously and then decided, oh, I'll do this, I'll do the half marathon, but like that hadn't fuel first, or maybe hadn't done a half for, maybe even more than a 10 mile in quite a long time, and then went out in the morning. So no, my perception kind of before I would have done this type of nursing would have been that it would be all young people, but no, it's very much across the board for the full marathon and the half marathon, and it was males and females. It was pretty down the middle, to be honest.
Yeah.
You get kind of all injuries in, you get a lot of chafing in. There was a lot of falls. There was a lot of falls at Dublin City Marathon, actually. People falling on the bottles. So they're always something that, and it's actually made me paranoid running along, because I've seen the falls. I've seen people fall at 20 miles and, would have been running a really good race and then tripping over plastic bottles. So it is definitely something for people to be aware of, because you don't think about it until you're in there on the day running, and next minute you're on the ground.
Yeah,
So yeah,
because I did a half marathon maybe 3 weeks ago, and there was a guy in front of me, and he had a bottle, and he was just running, and
yeah,
actually literally just dropped it
yeah,
next to him, so it was in my path. So
yeah,
I passed him out, and no, but
yeah,
like I was, and because they're normally still relatively full, because people don't go
yeah.
down the full bottle. But
That's
yeah,
it.
I mean, I'd normally try and get it to the people that are collecting it, or try and chuck
I
it,
know.
But it's
That's it.
it's one of
And if
these
you're
things.
going at a pace and you're trying not to break your stride, you're trying to almost avoid it while not breaking your stride. And sometimes then if you're kind of in a little crowd, or when there's the people are all kind of gathered together for getting a drink and everything, and then people just go on a little bit further, but there's still kind of that kind of crowd ahead of you.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where the falls were happening as well. So, but the heat is a huge thing for running, and we're not used to running in hot temperatures in Ireland, and unfortunately it was just a warm day for the half marathon, and it did affect people. The people really enjoyed it. They came in, they were just, everyone praised the route and the atmosphere and everything that day. It was just unfortunate. Yeah, we had quite a few very sick people at the half marathon. Now we had them at the full, but not as sick.
And
Yeah.
does that scare you, or does it make you more sensible and more attuned to what you do yourself better, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it doesn't scare me, but it probably makes me more. Yeah, it definitely makes me think about my nutrition and my fueling and my salts a lot more, definitely.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but we do mind you when you come in, and I try and stop the watches when I can.
Oh yeah, but that's
So
great. You know
yeah,
you know about their Strava accounts and everything, so
that's
you
it.
can.
Absolutely, I do be. There'd been some of them would be, they wouldn't be very witted, and I'll just kind of get in under and grab their watch and stop it, and they're quite grateful afterwards.
So, is there a lot
um,
of people that finish and then end up in the tent rather
yeah.
than?
That's it. We'll always do our best. Like the lads will do their absolute best to keep people on the course. Or, if they're down near the finish line, if they'll do their best to kind of nearly, some of the paramedics, or the lads, the medics would be runners and will do their best, if it's safe to kind of encourage them to keep going. But so ultimately sometimes it's just not. But a lot of it is in those last couple of 100 meters, but it's generally when they get over the finish line, they're vomiting and they're kind of being picked up and brought into us then.
And and just for clarity, this isn't that they're pushing so hard that they're throwing up. This is because they
Yeah,
have not fueled, and they haven't. In a 5K, you'd often see someone
yeah,
finishing so exhausted, and they might be throwing up
yeah,
because they've pushed. But this is people that have maybe not fueled properly, or
Yeah. Now there's some that have just pushed themselves to the limit, and it's just been too much for them.
Yeah.
Definitely, you know what I mean. But generally, it's just people. I think, as I said, the half marathon distance we underestimate it, and I underestimate it sometimes myself. I'll go out and run a half marathon and then wonder why I'm exhausted, an hour or two later. And my best friend, she'll be like, "Well, like we've ran a half marathon. This is why we're tired, you
Yeah.
know." But it's a big distance on the body, so we do underestimate it. And I think, running long distance has become such, it's more accessible through social media now, and people, that would have been kind of comfortable and happy doing a 5K. I think there is a bit of a pressure on people to be like, well, I should be doing a 10K, and that person is doing a half marathon, and people are pushing themselves maybe before they're ready. And unfortunately, sometimes that can happen then where there's consequences on race day, But generally, most people that come into the tent, it's just a bit of TLC, it's hydration, it's just rest, and they'll come around pretty quick. Unfortunately, we have had very sick people in that have ended up being transferred to hospital.
Yeah.
But generally, they it's just fluids and a rest for them. But
And
yeah, they're
and are you itching to get out running, or is it like, is it just as rewarding when you're in the tent at the finish
I
line, or
no,
is
I
it
love
like,
it. Yeah, there's a bit of, oh, I'd love to be doing it today, but I suppose because I'm a runner, I love chatting to the runners, and I suppose I feel that I can emphasize with them, and I genuinely feel it for them, especially when they're at the later stages of the races if they've had to come into us. And I think probably having that, like, God, really feeling it for them, being in there, probably, I don't know, does it help them, but it definitely kind of, I suppose makes it more enjoyable for me. Kind of, I love my job. I love being an emergency nurse, but definitely working as a runner in the medical tent, it's a privilege. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And you're
yeah,
there with people's, they've trained so hard. They've trained so hard to get to the start line, and it is devastating for people. I know it's a marathon and a half marathon, and the bigger context of the world, it's not the end of the world, but for that runner in the tent with me, they've put 6 months of their lives on hold to train. And I think it's, if they meet someone at the end, that's going to be, if they meet me in the tent, they'll get the TLC because they'll be getting it off a marathon runner.
yeah,
So,
yeah. And are you
you know
normally at the finishing line, or have you been halfway through a race as well?
we were at Ballsbridge last year. I think this year I'm at the finish line, so I haven't got the allocation now yet, but last year was at Ballsbridge.
And
So
how do you balance that with your work and getting? Do you have to apply for that, or is it a case of?
So it was kind of, I suppose it was kind of word of mouth through. So Larry's a paramedic, and he would have worked with this event medical company. So I kind of got in, I suppose, essentially through him. And yeah, I've kind of been doing it for about a year and a half. So, and then a lot of the crew there are paramedics. And then, I know the consultants and the doctors quite well now. So we have our little group, and they just give me the dates of when they need me, and I'll tell them then if I'm available. And then I can usually try and work my roster in the hospital around that then.
So it's not part of your job. It's again, you're
So
volunteering
separate.
for this.
Yeah. 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 It's separately. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's
So,
fabulous. That's fabulous. Because again, it's one of these things that, I suppose going around, I always appreciate the volunteers in a race and the ones that are handing out the water. And sometimes you
yeah.
just assume
Oh,
that's the medical
yeah.
people are there and are, just they're
Yeah. A
part,
lot of
they should
like,
be
we
there.
get paid for kind of volunteering. It's not, you know what I mean? It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be just what you'd be getting if you worked in the hospital money wise,
Yeah,
but it's a fantastic experience. And as I said, I suppose I have an interest in it because I'm a runner, and I can almost kind of, I understand kind of what they're going through. Like, I've been at races where I felt so physically sick I couldn't talk. So, just, I think that kind of empathy, kind of going, I get it. I know why you're like this. You're going to be fine. I promise you'll be,
and
and just,
and do you have to kind of delve into Have you been taking your gels, or is it a case of you're just dealing with?
Yeah, yeah. If they're coming in, I would try and get a background picture of like, have you taken gels? What did you take on the race? What did you take on the race? What did you drink? Because then it can help us gauge, do they need fluids through a drip? Are we okay? Given, sometimes we've had people in the medical tent, and the blue Lucozade Sport, the blue one.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's a matter of like, we'd have boxes of it, and you're getting them to drink some, and they literally come around so quick. It's just their sugars have dropped so much.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
you know
this
what I
is
mean? So,
and this is
oh, come
why
on.
they say swapping numbers,
Yeah,
not through the proper channels, can be quite dangerous. Then, if someone is out of it, you need
if
to know.
someone is, and that's the problem. That's what we've kind of come up against with. We've had unfortunately people coming in completely unconscious, and quite unwell, needing a full medical team around them, and you're just taking off their bib and trying to contact their next of kin on the bib, and you know what I mean? Like, you're hoping that it's the right next of kin, that it's the right name, because you're trying to get their next of kin or their family or their relatives down quite urgently sometimes. And it can often be we need to try and find out if they have allergies, if they have medical history.
Yeah,
Can we give them, how, like, do they have something going on in the background, that we don't know about? Have they been sick during the week? So you need that information quite,
yeah. So
quite urgently at times.
I suppose, swapping numbers aside, the important thing is that you have the correct information written on the back of your number.
Really important. That's the first thing we go for, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, because it's very difficult otherwise, as I said, sometimes people just need to be cooled down, like our body temperature like rises with long endurance running. And some people, you get to a point in endurance running, if you haven't been taking, if it's a hot day and you haven't been hydrating, you can lose the ability to regulate your body temperature. And that's when you're can become in quite a difficult situation, and you can become very unwell very, very quick. So it's coming into us and getting that rapid cooling. And often it's throwing ice on them and fanning them down. It's the old fashioned stuff, you know.
well,
Um,
it's there for a reason, I suppose, isn't it?
yeah,
But before we get too drastically consumed by the tent job, which I think is fabulous, I'd like to just get back into a little bit of your running story again. And I really appreciate what you've said and told us, which is important for this time of the year as we get so close to the Dublin Marathon, that we be wary that we're fueling properly and we're doing all the right things. But let's just, before we get to the end of the show, talk a little bit more about your running journey again, just to lift the mood before the end of the show, if that's okay with you. So, quick question. Do you prefer running mornings,
yeah.
lunchtimes,
I
evenings?
prefer running in the mornings. Oh, hands down, yeah. And my shifts have been, actually, because of the way it's fallen with them going to their dads this week, I've started at the normal time of 7:30. So I didn't get out yesterday for a run, but I knew I would be home in bed by 10 o'clock. So then this morning I went out and did an interval run and then picked up the boys. So it's just that balance, you know what I mean? So, and I felt so much better for it. Now, saying that, when I go for a run in the middle of my shift, often I'm tired. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. This is going to be awful. And I come back and I'm buzzing with energy. Even the patients, are like, oh, we have our regular patients in, and they're like, there's that nurse going out for her run. And I come back in, and even the paramedics are like, look at you, you're buzzing. We saw you flying past us. And it definitely, like, I'm so much more energetic on my shift, and I feel like I'm sharper and feel like I'm clearer. Or if we say had something big in that morning, you kind of run and process it a little bit later that day. So yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's good.
my
But
my
I do prefer running in the morning.
my sister had asked me. She said, are you not knackered when you run? And I was going, no, I actually feel worse on the days. This is probably before marathon blocks now, but the
Yeah.
days that I'm not running, I have often felt worse. I feel stiffer,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. But getting out for a run is so good, and I love. Again, another kind of perk with the Runner's Diary podcast was Running Buddy, which is a kind of a strength and conditioning app.
Yes.
And
Oh, I didn't
the,
heard of that one.
yeah, it's good. But again, you follow a not necessarily program, but well, you are on your off day, rest day, you might do strength and conditioning, or you might fit it in between coffee and lunch or whatever in your
Yeah.
life. But they have kind of pre-warm up, pre-run exercises and a stretch it out exercise for every evening kind of thing. Oh, jeepers, I love that. Like I love the when you could do the stretches and your calves,
Yes.
and it's
It's so
fabulous.
important, isn't it? And I
Yeah,
find the stretching really good. And I actually did one this evening there, or this afternoon, for kind of figuring out, oh, there's a niggle there that I didn't think I had. But whatever
yeah,
way you're kind of picking up on those, not injuries, but niggles that could turn into an injury. And that's why I find like that stretching, I try and do, maybe 25, I think it's 25 minutes once a week. And then there's Pilates on the Run app then another day. But I find the stretching brilliant because it'll kind of help me kind of realize, oh, that's tighter than I thought it was. And you're just loosening everything out. And it feels great, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
I really like it now, I have to say.
It's funny because I would have done stretches before running, but with the running buddy kind of routine, it's
Yeah.
more it's more of the jumping and skipping
Yeah.
and the hip, like open the door, closing the door. I don't know what the correct name is for.
They're very focused on the runner's body, aren't they?
Yeah, so it's moving
Yeah.
rather than stretching, and then the stretches are
Yeah.
better afterwards or in the evening. You said on the last episode we had with you, you had plantar fasciitis.
Yes.
One of the things I've got a slight addiction to shoes,
Yeah.
running shoes. Do you find that you have to mix it up? Do you have a shoe rotation, or do you?
Yeah. I do. So I'm currently using the Asics Nova Blast, the 25s, Nova Blast 25s for my kind of longer runs. They're lovely and cushioned. I'm finding them quite good now at the minute. And then for my tempo runs and my interval runs, I'm finding I usually use the Saucony Triumph or the
Okay,
Saucony Guides. Yeah, I find them brilliant. And then for marathon day or race day, I use the Saucony Endorphin Speeds, and they're
okay.
brilliant.
So
Yeah, so the cushions run.
you don't have a carbon plate then?
I don't know. I've been nervous about going for a carbon plate. I haven't tried it yet.
Game
Um,
changer.
I know everyone says it, and I had a pair of Nikes that I ran in years ago, and they were my favorite runners ever. And then I went to the next model, and that's when I got the plantar fasciitis,
Yeah,
and just put me off Nikes completely. So I have to look in. I know there's Endorphin. I think Saucony's or the Asics are doing their own version of it now. So but I probably
yeah.
will never run likes again because of that.
No, no,
and
that's
and
fair.
it's great for people.
I think I think it's like we were saying with taking electrolytes. If it's in the head, that
Yes.
is good. And if you've, I I have more. I'm a retail. We have our own shop, so
Yeah.
Nike don't really go into shops anymore. So
Yeah.
I prefer to. So if I go to my local running store, which is the
Yeah.
Edge, I often talk about, or
Oh
there's
yeah, it's great, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, or John Buckley's are here as well. But
Yeah.
I look at the brands that are supplying to the shop, so that dictates a little bit to me what I go
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
But I was a bit like you, and I know Ivan, my wife, was very nervous about carbon plates. But
Yeah.
again, the coach, the first thing he said to me, and we had a kind of a briefing phone call, and he said, "Do you have carbon plates?" And I said, "No." And he says, "You have to get yourself some, because that'll give you the 4:30 to 4:15 marathon, maybe." Um,
Larry, my partner, probably has his head in his hands right now, going, "Oh no, here she goes again." She'll
another
be off
pair of
the
shoes.
carbon plate.
But for race, like saving them for race day, like not running all the time on them. But
Yeah.
you see, like Brooks are doing them now, and Brooks are fairly a solid shoe. So
Yeah, they're
uh,
great.
some
Yeah.
some of them are a bit on some of the carbon plates. You feel unstable on them. So
Yeah.
I use the Hyperion, I think they're called, the Brooks, and they're carbon plated. And cheapest, like you put them on, and you're almost pushed forward.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? Because I found that with the Nova Blasts, actually, I was kind of like, oh, these are like nice and bouncy. And I could definitely feel the difference. My legs weren't as heavy or as tired in them.
Yeah,
But there's a great running shop in Tullamore as well. I think it's Ready to Run. I haven't been over there in a while, but I know I'll go to him for my next pair of shoes because he's just so knowledgeable.
and
I can't think of the gentleman's name, but everyone around the Midlands knows him. That's a runner. and goes to him for their shoes. And he's great now. So I must go over and have a chat with him. I would love to do a winter marathon, but I haven't. So I'm going to kind of train as if I'm kind of going to go and do a winter marathon like November, December. But I haven't decided what one yet, but I will keep the training up. So I kind of keep myself ticking over. But yeah, I haven't been able to find one yet. I think there is one down in Killarney, but I'm not sure if it will work with my shifts. But I think there's another marathon in me before the end of the year. I feel that there is.
So you're basically keeping yourself tipping over marathon to marathon kind of thing, as opposed to going, I'm not doing any more till next year or whatever.
So I think what I'll do is now, if I kind of see that I haven't, like if I see a marathon kind of say early on next year, like February or March,
Yeah.
marathon, I probably would pull back on the training then, so I could kind of get marathon ready. But I still have it in my head I want to do a marathon in November. And I'm not saying I wouldn't. I only said it to Larry there during the week, like I would go out and run a marathon myself at this point. It's been a bit of a goal of mine to do a solo marathon. No medal, no,
Oh, you mean
not celebrations. Just
you mean
go and run. Yeah,
okay?
by
Nothing,
myself.
nobody
Yeah,
around you. Oh, yeah.
nobody around me. Just, yeah, it's a little personal challenge that I've kind of thought about doing. So,
Well,
yeah, might be in the bag at the end of the year.
you'll have your Strava on just to make sure you record it in case you do your.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to kind of get back down below the sub 2 half marathons again, like even 158, 157 comfortably.
Yeah.
But absolutely 2026, I really want to get, I'd love to get like a sub 420 marathon even. Anything from 420 to 415. That's the aim for 26.
You definitely have that in you for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
be confident just in your half marathon times alone, just knowing
Yeah.
me that you definitely have a 4:15.
Yeah.
Definitely,
I just have to
definitely.
be brave enough to push
Yeah,
myself.
but it is interesting because I hadn't been prior to just being running with more people, and it was somebody I said that last week. I think somebody had said you just need to be braver to me, and I was going, yeah, they're probably right, you know.
I know, and that resonated a lot with me actually when you were talking to Fergal and Angelique. I was like, that actually is something that I have to work on myself. Just
Yeah.
that, just believing in myself a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, but your times are definitely suggesting that you definitely can do it. And it is, as you're running along, maybe not if you're running on your own, but if you're running along,
Yeah.
just having it in your watch to say just, speed up a little or slow down a little.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's it.
but still running marathons is fabulous. And if you've done 5 so far, so that's a major achievement in itself. So yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes times aren't as important as we think.
No, that's it exactly.
And you can book in for a Yall half marathon next year. That's flat enough.
Oh yes, I was only looking at that actually. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you'll get 150 for that next year.
Yes, absolutely. Might be a little goal now I'll have to put down in the book.
Yeah. Well, listen,
Definitely
Laura,
another one.
thanks very much, and I appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
All right, thank you.
That's Laura Fleming, this week's guest. I do hope you enjoyed that chat. Next week, we're going to have Karen Toomey back on as she focuses more on her Dublin marathon training block. So I hope you can tune in for that as well. It's been a pleasure. Follow, like, and subscribe us on all the social media channels. But for this week, thanks for listening.